Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to a new episode of the X Button, Season 5, Episode 11. I am your host, Alejandro, and with me, finally, just him and I, like it used to be in the old times.
It's Paul, everybody. I absorbed my other bearded co-host.
You have
I am
become
the ultimate
Sordon.
bearded individual.
You've become a Sordon, or kind of like, what's the other, like, big robot that becomes like a one thing?
The
And
Megazord.
Megazord, but I know there was another, like, was it Messenger C? I don't know. I like whatever, or Voltron.
There's just so many of them.
Yes, I think Voltron would be one. You're the Voltron, the bearded white dudes. How you doing, Paul? Glad to have
I am doing all right. It's nice to be here, ready to talk about things and just shocking things and boring things and a little bit in between, and that's what we're here for.
Exactly. And yeah, especially I can't wait for us to be able to talk about this, because I think it's kind of fitting that we get a solo episode and we're going to be able to talk about deeply about this franchise again. But before we
One of the only things that we've talked this much about.
Yes, pretty much, that you're not annoyed talking about, because it doesn't happen quite as often. But before we get into that, yeah, we will get there. This is the X Bottom Podcast, Escapes Gaming Podcast, that posts every Fridays from 10 a.m. Central Time onwards, God willing. Available in the YouTube channel Escape Gaming, as well as most audio services around the world, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and the like. You can find links in the RSS feed at tinyurl.com/escapegaming. If you enjoy our show, give us a like and subscribe. And then, because I forgot to mention, Joe mentioned it last week, he's right now on a vacation in Vegas. He sent us a picture right now as we start recording. He's at Hoover Dam. So by the time you listen to this, he won't be there. So keep your guns down. You're kind of missed. So, Paul, before we go into talking about the thing we want to talk about, another game came out. Funny enough, both these games came out today. We played the other one a few days before, but this one came out today. You played a little bit today. I only saw the intro cutscene. I was like, ooh, groovy. But you played Xenoblade Chronicles X.
I know. This is a weird game, just a complete black hole for me. Despite my propensity for collecting systems and holding on to them forever, I somehow managed to not ever touch. No, that's not true. I never owned a Wii U.
Yeah.
I had a roommate all through college that I was able to borrow it from and play pretty much everything. But this was one that just escaped me, and it was such a unique game that I was always sad it never showed up anywhere else. So even if I'm sad that it doesn't make it to all of the other systems, I'm glad that it's finally on one with, like a real working digital shop.
So yeah, tell me, what do you think of the first few hours you tried of Xenoblade X?
A lot better than I really expected or gave it credit for. I am noted for being on record really slamming Xenoblade Chronicles 2, and a lot of reasons, but some of which, in hindsight, were probably unwarranted now, because the opener for this game is crazy. You start it off, and it's just. It's surprisingly simple. It's just like, all right, we found you, make your character. We're going to run this way. We're going to show you, hey, you can jump off the cliff and go this way, or you can go this easier way. It's your choice. We're going to follow you wherever. And then once you get to the hub, I was just getting such like a Crisis Core, God Eater. It's like this game was built for like portable in mind almost, which is ironic that it was exclusive to a system that was impossible to be portable.
Yes.
But I was really digging the feel for it all. I'm sad to hear that the mechs don't really come into play for another 30 hours, but the game is so huge that I guess in the real grand scheme of it all, the fraction isn't all that bad. To getting you into the frickin' robot Shinji. Either way, I was actually really enjoying myself. Something about the guns and the MMO style just kind of worked for me instead of like the really aggressive medieval style of things that I've played a million times in MMOs. So maybe that's why it doesn't actually hurt as bad. And then I had a realization where I went, oh my goodness, this is Knights of the Old Republic, where you have your blaster, you have your grenades and everything, and then you just kind of let it play out, but you can kind of position yourself. And that, I don't know still what to think about that, because I love Knights of the Old Republic. I haven't really flagshipped its combat system exactly, but at the same time I've been a lot more forgiving for it. compared to Xenoblade Chronicles. And now, with that realization, makes me want to go back and play the rest of the series. Those are pretty much all of my thoughts. How about you?
Yeah, it was kind of like the thing that struck me, like looking at just playing the initial, how can I say this? Kind of like the initial cutscene and even just moving around early on. It's like, why does this game, being from 2015, look so much better than so many? How can I say this? Like, that's so many Switch games. Isn't that weird?
Mm-hmm.
Like,
Yeah,
yeah,
very detailed.
it's like so detailed, especially out in the open world. And I was having recently seen a game like the games like the Pokemon games and even the Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom that obviously is like they're carried by their style and they're kind of like very vast. But the amount of detail this has, and I'm like, this was on Wii U, and a lot of people are saying that they didn't do much visually to this one to get it done on the Switch.
Yeah, they were doing the whole comparisons, and I was noticing how little they really needed to do visually to update everything. I mean, obviously you can like high res the character facial expressions and all the models and everything, but even then I was like, well, I can kind of see the individual pixels on this character's eyes, but that doesn't bother me. It's like all a stylistic choice. And um it's really funny though, the like clearly we're going to appeal to the Western audiences with like very realistic features in some ways, and so you have just a dude with like a really stoic, grumpy looking face, like he came straight out of a 2013 game, and then you have the big bright white-haired anime girl on the front of it that's like very clashing styles. But I guess like it's a net positive because it all kind of works out, and it's like, well, that's Xenoblade. But it almost makes me think of like a parallel universe where we'd gotten more stuff like this, or like if Phantasy Star Online still existed, or if Star Ocean was still coming out with stuff,
or an
and
RPG not stuck on Switch. That's a problem with
exactly. Oh
Xenoblade.
my gosh, yeah. And I want more of that, and it would be wonderful to get more of it.
Yeah, and it's a good thing that, well, this is the swan song of the Switch as we move towards the Switch 2. And I've heard like it takes like close to from between 120 to 150 hours to really finish. So you're playing at work now, that you have something that you know will last you for a good while, because I don't even know how much like advances you can even make with whatever you do at work, but at least you get to play there. So
It's I will say it's probably going to keep me a little bit too engaged for most time at work, but every once in a while I could probably keep it up in my corner and just hit a few buttons here and there and jump into some combat. As long as it doesn't take too long, I could probably power level myself, just kind of like hitting a button here and there, almost AFK, treating it like an AFK game.
Yes.
And it's not an actual MMO. It's not online unless you actually wanted to, which I forgot was a thing. Or you can like actually team up with your buddies, or do like the big leaderboard attacks on like the huge monsters. So yeah, it's just there's a lot here that I didn't realize was there. I know fans of the series have been like hyping this stuff up for a long time, and somehow like most of it kind of went under my radar, where I was just like, oh, of course they're saying that because they're JRPG fans. Because I'm gonna be honest, sometimes people are like, this is the craziest thing I've ever seen, and it's like
That's always
you hit a
JRPGs.
button and like something happens and a big number shows up, and I was like, all right, whatever. But this time it actually looks pretty cool. Every time they show gameplay of this game, I'm like, I didn't know you could do that. Then why haven't they marketed this at all?
Yeah.
So yeah, anyway.
Yeah, I feel like Gene Park did a better job marketing the game than even
So much better. It was always his gameplay videos to like show preview content of it, where he like did his crazy shoulder mounted cannon and freaking deleted a boss by blasting its head off, and showing that
one was nuts. I saw that one that completely killed
the design for the Skells being the same guy that did Armored Core, and I was like, excuse me. Same thing with flying into the city with his robot, and there's like no loading screens in it. I was just like, why is he the one doing this? Why is he the one that has to do it? And then of course, fortunately, now that the game's actually out, it's just like a million videos of people going, oh, I played this forever ago, I'm so glad it's here, and stuff like that. But yeah,
I know like the thing that Xenoblade always bounced off for me, it was mostly because I was like, if I want to commit to like a long game, I don't want to commit to one in the Switch unless it's Zelda. That was always kind of my thing. And I know Xenoblade always was like very loved by the hardcore JRPG audience that was always there. Where my eyes started to peeling more into trying to maybe get into it, like was 2 years ago, around the time where I really got into Final Fantasy VI. If you remember when I went through the Pixel remasters, and learning that the scenario like writer of like the World of Ruin was the guy that created both the Xenosaga franchise and eventually came to do the Xenoblade games. And that was kind of like, he was the one that came up with like that kind of idea of like this grand adventure that just kind of goes into a world of ruin that you kind of see in the Zelda games, ironically, because all his company Monolith Soft assisted with Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom on top of doing the Xenoblade games. That I was like I'm very into his style of like storytelling, and they tell me that's not what Xenoblade is. Maybe one day. The problem that, as it always is with Switch, please get cheaper. Those games are never go down on sale too much for me to ever like forever to be like impulse buys. So that was always kind of like my my issue with trying to get into Xenoblade, because I was like, man, it's still too expensive, and I don't know if I want to spend this many hours on the stinky Switch, basically how I said. But even looking at Xenoblade X, I'm like, damn, it's like this doesn't feel stinky at all right now. It's like this is actually really,
it's kind of reminds you like what the Switch should be capable of and how often people are just not utilizing its power. I mean, like, we have our Breath of the Wild and our Tears of the Kingdom, and then literally almost, I'm going to really throw a blanket statement, but almost nothing else really utilizes the Switch's capability. And it's really a shame, honestly. I genuinely forgot after all these years what the Switch is even capable of, because we get Pokemon every year, and it's like, oh, I guess it's just what the Switch can do. Switch is really underpowered. Everybody talks about it for 5 years, and then you're reminded, no, it can really do some stuff. People just don't know how to use it, apparently.
And obviously, like, to its limits. Obviously, people can do some stuff in it. Obviously, it's never going to look like with what we see on PS5 or Series X right now. This is still like technically PS3 360 era hardware, maybe close to PS4, like Xbox One hardware. That's why the Switch is so exciting to see how far is that leap going to be for them. Like, are they going to get like close to at least Xbox Series S in power? Who's like, based on the things that we've heard, we're getting so close to find out in literally 3 weeks. Like the direct that is going to show us the Switch 2 and the games that are supposed to be there. We're gonna know. I am really interested to see what Monolith Soft does with Switch 2. If they were able to get this, like if they're able to do this in this POS over here, like if they were able to if they were able to do that on the Switch, imagine if they're not as constrained with if they're not as constrained with the Switch 2. I feel now, like, just with the little that I tried, I'm like, I sent you the meme, like I underestimated you. I didn't know, like, what was the meme?
It was like, I have to apologize, I wasn't familiar with their game.
Yeah.
It's essentially, it's the Shaq meme, the one of many.
Yes, I love that one because it's like so true.
It's a really specific vibe that I 100% get now more than anything, because it's like, I was so mean to Xenoblade Chronicles as a series, because the first one obviously is like, you can't find it anywhere.
It's
the
on
second
Switch
one came out
right now. It's on Switch.
I mean, like, now, but I mean, like, back in the day,
it was a Wii game.
By the time I found out about it, like, the Wii was long gone out of like usability for me, and it was just like, I found out about it through Smash Bros. Let's be real. I'm not too prestigious to admit that, but then Xenoblade Chronicles 2, I bought that on launch. I was like, all right, clearly there's something going on here. Let me try it out. And I was like, oh, I hate this. I hate everything about this. This is crazy. And I thought that was just what the series was. And turns out, no, just 2 is a little bit weird like that, but also you have to let it grow on you. And then 3 is like the one that everybody's like, no, this is actually like amazing fiction.
You know what I love the most about that? Do you know when Xenoblade Chronicles 2 came out?
I don't remember when.
2017.
That was the infamous Switch, right?
Yes, but infamous year for you.
What happened to me in 2017?
Remember, like, from what you told me, it's like it was a weird year where every game that you were playing, there was just not hitting.
Oh yeah. No, I do remember that now, because I mean, 2015 was probably like the last really good year for me game release wise. 2016 was like 17 was just really not great. You know what, you're right. And that was absolutely one of the
but
examples.
but for personal reasons, because remember, 2017 is known as one of the greatest years of that generation with Breath of the
Which is
Wild,
really
Horizon, all
funny.
that. Yeah,
Well, yeah, Breath of the Wild and a lot of the other things going on. There were some things out there. It's just for some reason nothing was going on
Assassin's
for
Creed
me.
Origins didn't vibe there, and then you see how you
Oh,
vibe
and
with that
yeah,
like years
yeah, I
later.
definitely hated that too.
So, so anyway, that's basically Xenoblade, and I am really curious to see, like, if we really love Expo, we have that $100 voucher to see if we get maybe 1 and 3. 2 you already had, so
I
or you
would
sold it.
definitely be more no, I sold it
Yeah,
like the next month. I think I would be more interested in 3 than 1 at this point,
hmm,
but we can always discuss it in
exactly.
details
Yeah,
later.
but now I'm gonna pay more attention to that, because at least besides Fire Emblem, I was like, RPGs that were exclusive to Switch, I was never really paying attention, even though the Xenoblade people are loud. But I think you and I are kind of similar. It's some there's annoying fan bases that are so loud about things that then you just decide to not
Hmm.
pay attention because they are annoying in the bad way.
Yeah,
Like
almost, almost out of like a knee-jerk reaction. It's like, all right, I'm just gonna stop listening.
exactly, and then it's like that, and bad for us because maybe they have a point for being loud. It's just that you have to be better at massaging and how you like say something's
Yeah.
great, people. But yeah, that was Xenoblade. But the big headliner, you saw it in there. You saw it in the title of this week's episode. Assassin's Creed Shadows review, because I got to review this for Season Gaming. I've been playing it over the last 2 weeks. My review is live on the site. It went live 2 days ago from when we're recording, 3 days from when this episode posts. Paul got to play it thanks to some certain arrangements that
Oh
I was
no,
able to
I
do.
played almost 20 hours of it within the span of release to now.
Yes.
Absolutely,
Yeah.
and I did not touch it before that.
But yeah, basically we both played AC Shadows. You played quite a bit of it. I finished it. So before I give my spiel, especially because so many people can read that before I say it here, I want to hear from you, Paul. Like, give a brief just summary of where you were with the series, how you felt about the series heading into this one, because I feel that determines a lot how you ultimately feel about Shadows.
That's probably a good point. So I'll give like the briefest rundown. Of course, like Assassin's Creed series in general to me was one of my all-time favorite gaming series of all time. Really did not like Origins at first. It slowly grew on me after like I think 3 or 4 years and finally going back to it. Odyssey was great until it very much wasn't. And then Valhalla, I had a love-hate relationship for a long time, getting to play it on the PS5 right when it released and just having a horrible time. Going back to it, I think 2 or 3 years later, after a lot of patches, bug fixes, make it a little less hot on the entry. And after, of course, all of the DLC was severely discounted and I bought all of it. I did not finish the entire game because it was way too big and there's way too much to do for my life. And then for this one, of course, everybody's talked a million years over about how feudal Japan is the break glass in case of panic for Ubisoft. And of course, here we are. And then once again, how does it stand up next to Rise of the Ronin and Ghost of Tsushima and Ghost of Yotei is coming out this year? It's going to get buried. All right, let's calm down, everybody, because for one, it's still really fun. It's an Assassin's Creed game. I believe as far as that kind of covers where I was sitting when the game came out as far as the series goes. At the same time, I was getting a little tired of it because the modern day stuff has not pulled me in really at all, unfortunately. There was a point where it was really getting me, and then I feel like they kind of undercut themselves in a lot of ways, but we can talk about that another time. And as far as the game itself goes, let me just like truncated thoughts of the opening hours are not fun. The opening minutes are great, fantastic. Opening like 15 minutes, and then it's just a slog for about 7-8 hours, and then it gets significantly better all of a sudden. And as you get more powerful with one character, and as you get access to the second character, you really get the actual gameplay loop, which is interesting that it is just forced to not around for you for that long of an amount of time, because then suddenly you are just handicapped. It feels like you just can't operate. It's like the 30-second rule,
Mm-hmm.
but like half of what you're capable of doing it just doesn't exist.
Mm-hmm.
Or just playing Metroid Other M or something. But anyway, yeah. So overall, it's like you feel somehow handicapped in some ways, but at the same time, it's a very specific decision that I respect and I want to celebrate, because it's so easy for us to say the easy process for them was to do this by the book, to not make it interesting, to not take any risks. And while a lot of people are going to criticize them for what they did, I
Mm-hmm.
think that is better. That is a better alternative than what we could have got.
Yeah.
And I think I'll stop there for preliminary thoughts.
Exactly. And risk taking is always good because it's like at least you're attempting something. And the thing with risk is that they're risky. Sometimes they pay off and sometimes they don't. And I feel the risks of Shadows are in between. They both pay off and they don't at the same time. That's kind of it exists in kind of
Yeah,
like that
I
weird.
probably should have ended my other statement with like, yes, they did make some good risks in one area,
Uh-huh.
and in a lot of other areas they were very safe, and I think that's to their detriment. But
Yeah.
yeah, continue.
Yes, but I feel like Shadows is interesting because right now Shadows exists at the tension of what people want out of Assassin's Creed and kind of like what it does, and also the fact that we have never spent this long waiting for an Assassin's Creed before. Like the series has always been on a 1 or 2 year rotation, like since it existed. 2007, the original one. Then from 2009 to 2015, a single Assassin's Creed game every year. A break between Syndicate and Origins because they reworked the series. Then the year afterward, they gave us Odyssey, that still like was built on the bones of what they attempted with Origins and fleshed it out more as an RPG at the expense of being an Assassin's Creed game. And then 2 years later, another refinement that added and subtracted with Valhalla, that they try to kind of like merge both the Origins and Odyssey style in a way that mostly worked, but was undone by how big that game was and how endless it was. I feel like Valhalla would have been one of the strongest Assassin's Creed games if it was shorter. Like legit, if it was shorter, because like it has a lot of good ideas that just don't sustain a long ass game. One that took me 123 hours, and I was able to enjoy those 123 hours because I waited to play Valhalla 2 years after it came out, after all the DLC was out, and when we had nothing to play. Back then, when we had dry spells for games, compared to like what people pretend is dry spells nowadays, which they can go F themselves. But yeah, so on that context, it's like when you hear, oh yeah, this one's taking 5 years since the last mainline Assassin's Creed game, and this is ignoring Mirage. That was DLC that got repurposed into like a smaller price game to try to appeal for the people that were missing non-RPG games. And the big difference is that Mirage was built in the bones of the RPG series, but they were able to tweak it enough to make it kind of like have the design philosophy of the older ones, despite the fact that it told a horrible story that I don't remember a single bit of it. But at least in the gameplay fundamentals, I was like, oh, this is how stealth can still work in this series, because let's not forget, Valhalla was a game that, despite their mightiest attempt at doing that, it was a horrible stealth game because it was like the stealth was broken. It was very, very broken in many spots. You could do stealth in many others, but if you wanted to stealth in raids, you couldn't. And sometimes it was hard to tell if you were in a raid area or not. So you couldn't really play the game how you would expect an Assassin's Creed game to play. It was more a biking action game if you were really into that. So 5 years after Valhalla, I feel like, so I can imagine, especially you hear Ubisoft when they announce Shadows, this is the third era of the franchise now. So you could divide it, the original Desmond and that initial area when you could run with R2 basically, when the old style, that was era 1. Era 2 was the RPG era, the three we just went through. And now this is the third one. You hear that, and it's been 5 years, you may expect, oh, so this is going to be a reinvention of the series, huh? Because you're taking this long. But I feel this is basically an iteration of what was there before. This is a game that's still a piece of the RPG series. It's kind of like some of the UI elements are similar. The way some of the flow is kind of similar to like what you see in the other ones. It just has been refined and subtracted in smart ways and also in other dumb ways. I feel like the positive that I have to give Shadows is that, considering this game was made by the Odyssey team, the game that you said you loved it until you didn't, Odyssey was a game really undone by its grind. If you're trying to mainline that game, you're level 20, and after you finish a mission, the next mission is level 30. It's like there's no clean way for you to do a story in that game, because there's like, okay, go go do all the side missions. Oh, and the XP gains are very small. It's almost like you want me to buy the $10 XP boost, huh? Like,
Yeah.
so it had that. I know a lot of people like Joe, who's not here, like he says, like, I do everything, so that wasn't a problem for me. It's like, yeah, but you have brain rot. But like so anyone that has completion is brain rot, like I tend to do. Maybe that's how you don't feel that kind of grind if you're like already kind of predisposed to do that. But that game was very artificial at holding up its main story on a grind in order to very deviously getting you to buy XP boosts, because the XP gains when the XP boost was on were the same as Origins. So that's when you know they were throttling. So that was something that I always was a sticking point with me with Odyssey, despite the fact that Odyssey was an amazing demigod like simulator basically. Like now the Wonder Woman game is dead. That's the only Wonder Woman game you'll ever get, and you can kind of pretend it is, and it works that way as you play with Best Girl Cassandra. But I feel Shadows took the right lessons of it's still an RPG, but there's gonna be a much cleaner route for you to kind of like follow from mission to mission. Missions are not as level gated, though the world is still level gated. And back from very unfortunate technical issues that we're having with this episode, of course it had to happen again, like just like old school time with this. But
it's almost nostalgic at this point.
Exactly. So, and I'm trying to think with that little break that we took of trying to get this sorted out. Like I don't even remember what
it
my
probably wasn't even important anyway. Cut to whatever the super important thing was.
Yeah.
But at this point, yeah, it's like we've been talking about Assassin's Creed Shadows and the concept behind it, and Ubisoft's whole mismanagement of the IP, and the fact that now this is basically required to succeed by a huge margin or it gets sold off, I think. So
kind of.
I hope it does well, and I hope they keep putting effort into it. I mean, shoot.
Yeah, but even besides, like you just removing like what Ubisoft was expecting from this game, and also a lot of people that have had very very bad faith arguments around this game, like ever since it was revealed, kind of like with the whole thing of focusing on Josuke as kind of like an outsider from Japan in the first game set on Japan, and only giving you the option of like a female assassin. I feel where Shadows exists at that tension is kind of like what you mentioned earlier about risks. The risk this game took was the fact that they're trying to split the Assassin's Creed fantasy, that it's a mix of stealth, parkour, and combat that you could do with all your characters, and kind of split that fantasy into a character that's good in one, and then another character that technically is good on two, and you can get better at a third, and that is Nawe. Like this game, like you mentioned how the first hours were not super great at first. It's like this game is weird. Like they sold this game as a dual protagonist nature, like a story nature. It's like you spend the first few minutes playing as Josuke, and then after that minutes, yeah, it's like 10 15 minutes. Yeah, I think I remember you saying that it reminded you of the Force Unleashed intro when you're playing as Darth Vader. And it's like after that you get a taste of like, oh man, his combat, he can delete this guy's in one or two hits, and like he's like so strong and all that. And then you switch to Nawe, and then you stay with Nawe for like 8 to 12 hours, because that's where
very very underpowered Nawe.
Exactly. Yeah, especially if you engage on combat. Obviously it's obvious that the goal with Nawe is like, no, she's supposed to be the stealthy one. She's a shinobi or Kuinochi, whatever you call the female assassin. I mean the female side of the shinobis. And if you play her as someone that wants to do combat, especially early on, she's one of the worst feeling Assassin's Creed protagonists that exists. She's very nimble. Her attacks take way too long for them to do any real damage. You have to wait until you unlock the chain sickle is called,
the Kusurigama.
The Kusurigama, that to do kind of like an area attack to keep many enemies at bay. And she does good damage whenever you get the Tanto, whenever you learn that you have to charge those attacks and all that. But she's just not someone that if you're like, your propensity is like, I'm not gonna be slinking around just killing everyone on stealth, I'm gonna like engage in combat, she's not the character for you. And I feel the game accommodates itself fairly well at giving you a full stealth experience with her, though at then the game fails itself by also putting you in combat with her, and early on she just does not feel good.
That's the weird part to me, because the commitment to it is one thing where I'm like, okay, no, we just have to like be stealthy, we have to be smart with our situations, and then they drop you into forced combat with her, and I don't even know if I want to call her like the worst feeling, because It's very clearly like a almost Assassin's Creed Unity. Like
Mm-hmm.
you have to parry on the timing. If
Mm-hmm.
there's more than two people bearing down on you, you get the hell out of there.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but at the same time, it's just like what you were saying in your review, which might actually be what I was going to
Mm-hmm.
say, is that your tools and your upgrades is really where things come
Yeah,
into it.
will hurt.
Um, and then suddenly you understand, once again, we're talking about the whole like removal of like half of the 30 seconds of fun rotation with the gameplay loop. Is like, well, once you have what Naue is actually designed for, she's great to play as, but you just need all of your ninja tools. You need more than just one weapon. um, you need to actually have some passive abilities to kind of like keep you above that line of difficulty. Or the alternative is you just actually learn to be stealthy at all times.
Mm-hmm.
Or you unlock the option to do one hit assassinations, which is
Yeah.
just like, some people might think it's cheating, but it's like, if it was part of the whole game up until
Mm-hmm.
this point, that's what we were talking about. We were talking about gating the
Assassination.
no, the regions that are
Uh-huh.
difficulty locked, and how if you unlock that ability in the options, it becomes just a new challenge to actually enjoy rather than beat your head against. Because yeah, you can take out any enemy with one hit, but also if you're found, you die in one hit. So
Mm-hmm.
it just kind of becomes this high risk, high reward. However, there is one caveat I will say to that, is that absolutely none of the gear that you will get you can use at all.
Until you get to
Because
that level.
yeah, so there is kind of like no, just don't try it, don't do that. As opposed to, hey, this is a challenge but it's really rewarding. It's like, no, just go back down to the low levels and work your way back
Yes.
up.
But I would say that with guaranteed assassinations enabled in the option menu, as it should be, because Assassin's Creed is about those one-hit assassinations. If Naue feels the worst in combat, she's the best one of these characters has ever felt in stealth. She
Absolutely.
is quick, she
And
is
movable.
nimble. There's a Metal Gear Solid 5 nature to some of like the mechanics that you can
It's
do.
that prone button, baby.
Yeah, it really is just about the prone button. And while that is stupid to just say that helps, it does. It absolutely does. Because with that, it allows you to kind of like slink around with anything, even use the environment like for your advantage. Like if there's like one of those castles that have those tiny ponds, if you unlock the upgrade, you can like prone in that water, and you have a little thing where you can be breathing there and have that as be your hiding spot when you're kind of going around. I love enabling one-hit assassinations because I felt the most I enjoyed doing the stealth was going to the higher level areas that I shouldn't have gone to, and secretly try to just loot and kill all of those bases, knowing that I was in danger of getting killed by one hit. I felt the game really like came alive for me that way, because it's like RPG mechanics and one-hit assassination I feel don't belong together. That is always kind of like a detention for why I enjoyed Mirage so much, because it came back, it went back to the core nature that makes Assassin's Creed. And I'm glad at least this option was enabled like by default, because if you wanted to eventually get there, like just by normal upgrades, it takes a
I don't
while.
think mine was enabled by default. I had to go in and do it.
Exactly, you have to go enable have to go enable it in the option menu, where you have to go to like combat, to the combat difficulty, where you can kind of tune if you want harder stealth, if you want harder combat, and the guarantee. I've heard a lot of people in the review period say that expert mode in the stealth actually feels really nice. Like
I did hear that too.
Yeah, I definitely want to try it. As rule of thumb, when I review, I leave everything in normal. The one-hit assassination thing was the only thing that I went to tweak, because I am of that belief that one-hit assassination is the way to go with the series. But I enjoyed stealthing around with her so much. It was like so. Even though the level design eventually got so repetitive, because like one castle you go may be the same like will be like repeated ad nauseum with everywhere else. It's like I feel like there's a lack of level variety in the places you go.
You
and I
kind
don't
of
know,
come
that's
into the Assassin's Creed 3 issue, like you mentioned in your review, is like, how much do you have to add to that? Because there weren't a whole lot of real built-up places out there that didn't look exactly the same, which is a shame. But it's also like, what do you even do about that?
Exactly. It's like there is always like, it's cool to put one of these games in one of these settings, because like conceptually they can be cool. As Shinobi assassin, a member of the Assassin Order, is like that works well. that was real kind of with the lore and all that. It's just kind of like you have to also take into mind that architecture wise, and kind of like what the setting allows you, there doesn't give much variety, and you run into kind of that problem because this game also, like the RPG series, it's a piece that it's a massive game, and Ubisoft loves copy and pasting a lot of the same like building designs and kind of like a environmental design that I feel like if you keep doing a bunch of that stuff over and over and over and over again, you'll start seeing a lot of the repeat environments, and then it's like the stuff is like, oh, I'm seeing the same design again, so I guess I have to go here and do this and all that. So that really that does hurt it a little bit, but I feel like that to me, like the one thing that was my sticking point was kind of like that split of the Assassin's Creed Fantasy, because when Yasuke comes in halfway, like not halfway through the game, like 10 hours into the game, and finally establishes like the dual nature protagonist, which you can switch between one or the other. He's a better character, not in gameplay, but in story. Now his story, you've heard it many times in the series. Let's just say it's a revenge tale. What starts that revenge tale? Go back to previous games that were like based on a revenge tale. That
all
were,
of them.
Yeah, except Edward Kenway in Assassin's Creed 4 Black Flag, that he just happened to get the garments of an assassin.
And then like I guess one until like the halfway point, and then all of the rest are some variation of revenge. Just trying to like flipping through right now. Yeah, pretty much all of them.
Eivor was like she didn't technically become an assassin, but kind of like the impetus of her story was, or his story, depending on your gender there, was also kind of like a revenge tale that was told very early.
Revelations technically wasn't a revenge tale either, but all the rest of them were.
Exactly. But at that point, it's like that was your third game as Ezio. The revenge tale had already happened on 2, so it was like for moving forward. It's why the story got more interesting with that as the games keep going.
Is a revenge tale.
Exactly. Oh yes, literally. So it's why because it was just a repeat of 2. Brotherhood as a story was the weakest, even though it was the best game. But there's not much like now. She's likable enough. She's kind of cute. Like there's something.
She's great when she's bouncing off other people.
Exactly. Yeah.
When she's talking to herself or about anything else,
she's
or like
stiff.
Really any conversation with her dad too. It's just, or any other ninja, because they're all like the same kind of stoic-ish personality for the most part.
Yeah.
But then when you hit the conversations with Yasuke and with any like Junjiro, the little kid was like that's a little breath of fresh air. Her mom, I think, the
kind of like mother figure, but not quite the mom, because the mom, I'll just say that's a spoiler. I don't need to say anything in regards to now his mom, but it's like something really cool that happens later in the story.
Gotcha.
And that's something that I really want to give praise to this game, because it is a slow burn that initially feels very by the numbers, because you've heard a revenge story before, but once Yasuke comes in and they have tied the origins of Yasuke as a slave before he went into the servitude of Oda Nobunaga, they've tied that origin to the larger lore of the series, the Assassins Templar, and specifically the Assassins and Templar side of things, in such a cool and compelling way that just made me want to keep playing as Yasuke, because there's something really cool as playing as this gigantic like samurai in Japan. Like you're just kind of walking.
Difference, man.
Yeah, it's so hilarious. It's like so hilarious. You're kind of mountaining over almost everyone that comes around you, and walking and role playing as Yasuke. Like when you go from town to town and the people react to you, even like the way like the soldiers when they're trying to warn you to not do something, you kind of comply, and kind of how respectful they feel because they're so scared of this massive black guy in Japan. It's like they made it really good, like at the world reacting to Yasuke in such a cool and interesting way. That is just so unfortunate that gameplay wise, he's just combat, and I feel they could have tweaked it just a little bit more to not feel so lopsided.
I'm curious though, what would you suggest if you could? Because I've been struggling.
Yeah.
What I would actually change about his combat besides like
combat, I wouldn't change a thing. That's it. Okay, combat is good. Yeah. The one thing they made.
You mean more like give him a little bit more of the tools.
Yeah. So I feel like the one thing that I'm letting go as something that maybe just leave it to now is the whole synchronization thing. Leave it to her. It's not that big of a deal switching to her to do like one of the higher synchronization map points, because you can still do a few with Yasuke. As long
Right.
as it's like it has ladders and all that, you can
As
climb.
long as it's like one of the trees.
Yes, but then the other ones are specific to her. I was like, okay, cool. I
Mhm.
was like, yeah, it's just a quick loading, not no big deal. I would love if you could just stay with him, but I would give him Eagle Vision at the very least, because they have not established Naue as like part of the first civilization lineage or anything like that.
Mhm.
So that was kind of like something that they kind of worked out into the lore, that the lineage of Cassandra as a Isu is why you have so many assassins that have like the Eagle Vision. That's not really established here. So it's like, give Yasuke at least a version of Eagle Vision, maybe not super.
I would say give him the pulse
At the very least,
from
yeah, a pulse, yeah.
whichever one that was. I can't remember.
Valhalla had the
Thank you.
pulse, because this one brings back the wall black and white, and you can kind of see. And you tag enemies now just without an eagle this time. They took out the eagle from the
Yeah.
previous ones. So at first I was annoyed because there were times I was just holding L2 and looking around. I was like, I can't fight crap, and then eventually it started clicking more in my mind, and I was like, actually kind of enjoy. I've
I
grown
will
to
say,
enjoy.
you almost don't need it because any items at all, you can just see through
Mm-hmm.
items or like locations regardless,
Mm-hmm.
which has been so nice. So even as Yasuke, if you need to find a collectible or a chest,
Hold L2.
you just hold L2 and there it is.
Yeah.
The only thing is that you cannot mark it, so you have to keep checking. But I mean, that's like you just hold L2 and you kind of zoom
Exactly,
in on
and
it.
just kind of go there. And I feel something else that I would have loved for him is that there is a way to get some stealth kills here. It's called brutal assassination. The problem is that it's a brutal assassination. What does it mean? You go in, you whistle to the guy, he turns around, and then it like stab him and scream, ah, and kill him. It's like
Oddly enough, I have not had as many issues with
there's been a
you and
few
a
that
lot of others where you
I
could just kind of do that. The guy's looking the other way, and then just
and
like
yes, there's a
hack his
few.
head off, and it's
Exactly. It's
move
like
on.
you can do a few, but it's like it's not a gameplay style that you can do completely. You can get away with it, especially with the bow and arrow. You eventually get silent, like very few, but you get silent arrows that you can get one hit kill enemies if you want, with a bow and arrow like from a
Yeah,
distance.
because it
But
like bypasses armor,
mhm,
which was interesting, but I
yeah,
wasn't sure how to feel about that.
yeah.
But I did want to actually point out one piece of trivia regarding weapons that is an
Mhm.
inaccuracy that I feel like would have actually benefited in a different direction, and that is the naginata was traditionally a weapon used by women. It
Really,
was not
and they give it to Yasuke.
because they gave it to the big guy. Like it makes sense because it's like big sweeping staff, and like you see it all the time because that
Mhm.
was something that they always held. But that was a self-defense, a home defense weapon for when you didn't have the space to like sweep around.
Mhm.
You'd stab it like a spear, and it blended more to the like a lack of physical strength.
Mhm.
So just anybody who wasn't very strong, not just women, but it was traditionally more used by like wives when they had to defend their homes,
Mhm.
which is something I didn't learn it from Blue Eye Samurai, but that was a very well implemented thing for
Mhm.
anybody that knows that. So it was funny that it was just like, oh, so they just gave that to the big guy. That's interesting.
That's what's so
Um,
fun. It's like it's very clear that they're like, we're gonna give all the melee strong weapons to Yasuke because it's supposed to be combat. I feel like Yasuke has like 5 weapons. Naue gets 3. You could have given at least one more to Naue.
but
Like at
even
least.
Yasuke's 5, there's like 2 that are kind of like a caveat
Mhm.
because you can only use them as openers or ending to the fight.
Mhm.
And I just kind of stopped using them after a while because I never felt like they were powerful enough.
Mhm.
Or unless you like really spec into that.
Yeah.
And I was more
Are you
interested in
using
just getting into it.
bow and arrow or the gun at all? Like, are you?
I used it when they did the tutorial for the gun,
Mhm.
and I used the bow at first because that was the second weapon that I got.
Mhm.
But the second I had a sword and a naginata, I'm only using those two, and I have no interest in trying any of the others, unfortunately.
Mhm.
I will say though, Naue has gotten a lot of use with the kunai and the shuriken for me
Mhm.
because that is so useful, especially
Yeah.
for some of these more difficult bosses once I've been found.
Uh-huh.
And I'm just like, this guy is dodging my moves. He is blocking everything I throw at him.
Crickets.
I'm just like, I'm gonna just freaking, I'm doing the John Wick 3 with the knives and just
Uh-huh.
shoot. shook, shook, until the guy is dead,
Yeah.
or until I get an opportunity. Which just it feels really good to be able to use that. I feel like that's a carryover from Mirage, just
Mhm.
how useful it is to
Yeah, just use the knives
use
and
those throwing knives again. Um,
yeah, you see a lot of Mirage. You can feel that Mirage eventually wormed itself into kind of this game. Even the way
mhm.
they do the objective, like the objective board, is very similar to Mirage in a way too. So it's like I'm glad
It
that
is so
it
much less overwhelming than
Mhm.
like when you opened up Odysseys. You remember how bad
Yeah.
it's just like, oh, this massive exploration of
Yeah,
everything.
yeah. The thing is, it gets overwhelming if you explore a lot. It eventually, and you start.
It
There's a.
does expand, but at
Mhm.
least it starts off with a. At first, I was like, is this it?
Uh-huh.
It's just like the 10 guys or whatever. And then
Yeah.
it's like, oh, but there's this other sect of this group. And
Mhm.
there's this other group. And then I was talking to you because, like, I accidentally would just kill a random guy.
Uh-huh.
And it's like black and white. Ooh, you killed the boss. And I was
Mhm.
like, who?
Ooh,
What?
exactly.
And it's
Yeah.
like unknown organization. I was like, what?
Exactly. So it was like at least it eventually gets very overwhelming depending on like how deep you go into like exploring the different
Yeah.
question marks and things like that. But at the very least, like in the main assassinations, I feel there's more curation than there was in Valhalla and Odyssey when you were going for like those targets. And I would say I do enjoy that whenever you finally get into the assassination, that is this where both Yasuke and Naoe kind of go. I do love that it gives you that option to kind of like tag team between them. As like, I'm gonna start with Yasuke where he's gonna go full frontal and gonna go face these guys, and then in the middle checkpoint I can then check on Naoe to go kill around like because I'm gonna go save some hostages, and then because this guy had like a personal connection to Yasuke, I'm gonna then finally play as Yasuke to finish up the target in like a boss fight. So I kind of like that it allows that. The one thing that really worried me with a few of the other assassinations was that then I was like, okay, I'm gonna try to do menus now because I kind of want to do it how I love doing, like getting these guys silently. Is it just me, Paul, or is it almost feels like every big target ends on a boss fight? Almost all of them.
Yeah, yeah,
Yes.
pretty much. I don't think there's any point where you can like bypass the real boss fight by
Mm-hmm.
just taking the guy out
Yeah.
because I guess they kind of went away from the whole like, all right, you successfully assassinated him, and then we have the little like alternate reality where the
When you're.
person gets their speech.
Mm-hmm.
I
That's
guess
just
they
a
were like,
cutscene now.
that's just a little too much. Let's like make sure that you can't kill them so they have their little
Mm-hmm.
cutscene moment.
Yeah. I would
Huh.
say I successfully was able to stealth two targets. Like, and even one of them, as soon as I climbed up, he saw me. I was like, no, 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 no. And then I let him kill me. I was like, let me see if I can just climb outside from here, just in the shadow. And he didn't quite see me. And then I saw an enemy, killed the enemy. And then the guy went to see it. And then there's an ability you eventually get with now where you can get like a slow motion for like 7 seconds. I
Oh
enabled
yeah.
that, and I went in and killed and got the stealth kill, and it allowed me to do that. And then there was
Ah.
there was another one, the one for the thief, the one
Oh yeah,
that's
yeah,
where the
yeah.
thief that if you're now you start kind of like on
That's
the
right. And
you
I
start on
had
the
to duel
ceiling,
him for that.
and I was able to stealth that one too. And also again by using that ability where I stop time just to give myself enough room to kind of get in and get the one hit assassination, which I don't even know if they would allow you to do that if you didn't have one hit assassination enabled. So I do feel they have really tuned it into being like boss fights to kind of give that final moment. And I do like that two of them, one of them can be spared. I'm not gonna say which one it was, and it was like a
Yeah.
really cool story moment if you kind of go that way. Then the other one you technically can spare, but then like he gets killed in the cutscene at the same time. So it's
Oh,
like they play around on trying to give you choice, but very few times, and then it's like just boss fights. And then to me that was like very. It cuts away on the oh yeah. If you want to have the boss fight, like you can go head on and just finish these targets on full frontal assault with Yasuke. But if you want to do stealth, just do it that way. I feel like the only thing that changes is the lead up to that to a lot of those
pretty
targets
much.
instead of
Because
like.
then you usually end up having a whole cutscene where they meet back up
Mm-hmm,
and then they confront the person together.
mm-hmm,
So it, I guess, cuts down. I mean, you have so many targets. I kind of understand, like, all right, I get it. You can't just have a
mm-hmm.
unique interaction based on both people for every single person. That's a lot and probably unfeasible. But I mean, if you're going to make so much game, you might as well use it for something
Yeah.
interesting, I guess.
Yeah, it's just so interesting that it's like if you really want to just get the stealthy, let's kill all those targets. It's just the little ones that you can find everywhere else that are not like the main story ones. And I would have loved, like, you just feel they didn't fully commit to two types of play, considering the big selling point was two types of play. It's again like why I said that the one thing that I like I feel there's a lot of step forwards this game has taken, and like enhancing movement, storytelling feels upgraded in this game. Like I recently just I was just replaying Valhalla just to see, like, let me just compare how this game's told story. It's like it's night and day. The presentation, like,
so much
like you can definitely tell that this game took advantage of being made for this batch of machines, whereas the last two Assassin's Creed games we got were cross-gen titles, still on PS4, but had enhanced PS5 versions, and you can really tell, like, cutscene quality is much improved, like the world detail, the dynamicism of the seasons when you're like in the world is so cool.
I was actually obsessed with that. I was taking on a boss fight, not just like a random base actually, and it started snowing, and the snow started collecting on the ground. But I was inside when it started snowing. So when I came back out, I was like, what the heck?
It changed, yeah.
Like while I was inside this building, it really threw me off. But yeah, continue.
But it's like it threw you up, but it's like that's a really cool detail. A dynamic season, like we have dynamic weather. This is dynamic seasons. Like in the last game that played around with seasons in Assassin's Creed was Assassin's Creed 3, and the thing was that those seasons were story based. Like you had one chapter that was like in the winter in Assassin's Creed 3, like later on when you were Connor. So, and then like it would be all story based whenever it would change. It was cool that it had the different seasons, but it was like not dynamic like it is now, where now that those seasons will change, and the game has been like built to like work with any season that you want, and it just so happens to happen. And that to me is like a good upgrade to the presentation. Visually, it's like a step up. Like it's a really beautiful game.
Yeah, it actually helps. One of the big complaints that I had about Valhalla was you have this amazing winter landscape, and then you spend like 30 seconds there, and the whole rest of it is in a admittedly gorgeous forest area, but then it never changes.
Exactly.
Besides, weather. But this is like exactly that, and I will say that is a fantastic thing that they've done to really change things up. Like even the fact that the prompt says, hey, go back to these areas because everything's kind of reset. You can go exploring in a new region. Things have changed.
Yeah, AI patterns change if it's too cold. Like they'll still try to stay more indoors, so they're like more packed together, or like that helps at least, given that like it gives dynamics to a game that it's not as dynamic anywhere else, or it's like it's halfway through, like in dynamics. It's like it does some things well, and it does some things that not as well. So it's like a constant push, like a tug of war of like, man, they're doing really smart like additions. Like, why do you guys do that? It's like it just felt like it's a tug of war of an Assassin's Creed game for me. But I will say the story really got interesting halfway through, especially when Zachity comes in, and then it ends relatively really strong. I'll just say getting out of the way, barely any animus interruptions in this game. There is no future character unlike the last three, and it's the vaguest it's ever been when it comes to animal stuff. This is one of the most historical setting centered Assassin's Creed games they've done, and I feel at least just in the tale that they tell there, because sometimes it feels like then that tale sometimes will get undercut to try to deliver the final word on the future. That doesn't happen here. I feel like the historical side, and both Zachity and Naue, ends in a really decent spot. That's a better ending than most Assassin's Creed games. Like the ending of Valhalla in the future was insane in concept, but anticlimactic in execution.
Because it was really banking on the next installment to follow up on that, and then we didn't get that.
Exactly. Yeah, we went back in the past to explain, and then they didn't even follow up on anything that was set up at the end of Layla Hassan's story in the last game. So it's like, if you are a fan of, I've always wanted my Assassin's Creed games to just be in the past without much like interruptions like in the future. More power to you. They've capitulated to you in this time. And how the animus is included in this game is both very vague, very brief, and right now with what's there with the Assassin's Creed Infinity Hub, borderline insulting, because the animus has now become kind of like the place where apparently live service stuff is going to happen. There's like 2 battle passes, literally, that you can do there.
when it finally, like, the release came out, and one of the first things I got when I turned on the game was just a swath of Call of Duty style marketplace, like,
Mhm.
spend $28 and get this pack of costumes, and I was like, oh no, we're back.
So back to back to
If
grinding
nothing
yourself.
else, at least for Valhalla, you had the merchant character that
Hmm.
would give you specific contracts,
And
that
it was
would give
within the
you the
game.
currency, and you could just play the game and get the rotation of stuff for free. I mean, like, I'm sure eventually that'll show up at like your hideout or
Yeah,
something,
it's
but it's
technically it's
still.
here. It's just in the Animus tab. Go to the Animus. There's an exchange tab. You
So it's
get
not like in the game
no,
itself.
it's outside the game, but so it's like
All
again,
right,
it's like it was like clean. That was like more elegant, elegantly like included with that little
right.
merchant kid in
Hmm.
Valhalla that was
I
also
love
in
that kid.
Origins. So it's like yeah, there's just so many so many decisions that I'm like, it's great in spots, questionable in others, and it ended great enough that despite those things, that's why I landed on an 8 at the end. Because when I started, I was like, this is like a 6,
Hmm.
okay, maybe a 7, and then like when the story really started to kick in, oh no, this is like kind of like 8.5. Then when the assassinations, I was like going through the main targets, I was like, am I really not gonna be able to kill stealthily like the big main targets? That sucks. I dropped down to like a 7.5, and I was like, the story will need to end strong enough for me to like go higher than this, and then it did. Like I thought it was like a nice ending that was not really an ending for these characters
Hmm.
either. It was a very like without spoiling what it is. It's like I love how like where the story ends, especially for Yasuke, like what it does because it ties to the great to the grander AC lore. And let's just say that it is not a coincidence that this game takes place after the Ezio trilogy in the timeline. Let's just say that it actually does make sense. Like it ties so well with like with Yasuke's origins when you really think about why are the Portuguese over here in Japan around this time. So
Hmm.
that ties it real well. And then like some mysteries with now it gets some like great follow-ups of what could happen that I'm like, yeah, I can see it. Yeah, knowing that there's gonna be live service stuff. Maybe this game's gonna have more ongoing content that they're gonna add, and I feel that there's a solid enough foundation here that I kind of want to keep in this era for a little bit more.
I will acknowledge that
Mm-hmm.
I'm definitely interested in having not finished the storyline yet
Mm-hmm.
and kind of still in the middle of the, well, let's just go kill everybody.
Mm-hmm.
I'm very interested in all the DLC and whatever they've got coming down the pipeline. I mean, they said that they were giving the first expansion for
Yeah.
free if you
Mm-hmm.
pre-ordered it, so that's already one hurdle crossed. I guess
Mm-hmm.
we'll see what happens from here.
Exactly. So it's like they did a pretty solid job. They did another very solid Assassin's Creed that in many spots is better than it's been in the last RPG entries. One of the other spots was like, man, you shouldn't have subtracted that because like that was done better in the other ones. But I think in balance, this may be the one of the RPG ones that I've enjoyed the most, like in stuff. But it's not like I enjoyed it the most, but it's not like a clear cut winner for me. Even though it won't be, it's like it eeks. It's not like it doesn't tower above the RPG side, especially with the questionable design decision. But I feel like it is strong in many other areas. And ultimately, the split, while annoying in concept and in execution, was like I lamented its execution spots in story moments. I feel like they justified it, and I just wish I wanted to play more with Yasuke. If they had just picked something a little bit more, I feel like it wouldn't feel as lopsided. So, but in the end, like play Yasuke for the story and then play Naoi for the gameplay. But that you can go read my review over at seasongaming.com, both in written and video form, basically, where I expand more of my thoughts here. But yeah, pretty solid. Like I'm glad I liked it overall. I just wish
Yeah.
that it was like a slam dunk. I don't feel it's a slam dunk, but it's a pretty solid to great game.
It's like a really nice, easy. It's not a layup. It's just like a good free throw.
Uh-huh. Exactly. Yeah. And for what Ubisoft needed, I feel like it's a solid enough win, and I hope it sells a lot. So
I think it depends entirely on what their budget was for it, but
yes.
we'll see.
And that's my fear because this one took forever to me. Like again, it was a 5-year in development Assassin's Creed game, and again, like if what you were expecting was the next reinvention, you're not gonna get it here. This is a refinement of the formula. And I feel that really votes really bad for sequels that take too long to make but are a refinement. I was just talking with another guy just today, funny enough, that I wanted to have kind of that conversation if the iterative sequel right now with this current development budgets and timelines are screwed, because it's like, remember when we got Uncharted 1 to Uncharted 2 in 2 years and the leap was massive? Like, we're getting these games 4 to 5 years separation, and the leaps are not massive. It's like they're the leaps you would expect from a short development cycle bloated up into a long development cycles. And I don't know if you have to blame devs for not having to reinvent the wheel with such a long development cycle. It's just kind of like the expectations have really changed, and I feel a lot of people are not recalibrated alongside it. And it's gonna be, and I understand, because it's like, oh yeah, I'm waiting 4 to 5 years for the next game, where it's just a tiny step up from what it was before. When we used to live in days where the step ups were that massive in short turnaround times. So I think that's what happened to this one. It's like it did not reinvent the wheel, but it sets a solid step forward for the third iteration. And I'm very, very curious for Hex now, which is the next one. And that's the one that's in the Roman, like the Holy Roman Empire with the witch.
Oh yeah.
So they got the Watch Dogs Legion director doing that one. Love or hate Legion, he tried to do interesting new things with Watch Dogs on that one. I want to see if he tries to like rock the boat with.
If nothing else, it's going to be a lot more obscure of a timeline that will be more interesting to learn from.
Exactly. And whereas Japan is like, apparently there's a lot of people that have historical knowledge of Japan. Everyone was a historian for it.
Everyone's an expert. I remember when Assassin's Creed 2 came out, I was like, I don't really care that much about the Renaissance, and oh, how wrong I was.
Yes.
Who would have thought?
Yeah, and I feel like, look, to this game's credit, I didn't even know much about Renaissance Italy at all before they set the game. In fact, setting the game there's what made me interested in the setting.
Exactly.
So
I did not realize how much cool stuff was going on there. Like, sometimes you just got to stick to that. So honestly, that's why I was pretty excited about the concept, because I was just thinking, well, you know what, I'm going to learn a lot about stuff, and there's like, I'm not going to take for granted, like, oh, look, it's freaking Benjamin Franklin. Look at this loser. It's going to be somebody I've never heard of, but probably going to have some interesting storyline.
Yeah, there's something funny, that the thing that made me most excited about doing Assassin's Creed 3 was, at that time in college, I was studying American Revolution. So I was like, oh, this is going to help me because I'm in class right now. And it's like the setting that was the most fumbled.
Yeah.
I would say that there's a lot of Assassin's Creed 3 energy in Shadows.
Absolutely. Like, oh my goodness. The between like the pacing, thankfully being much faster of a process, I would say.
Yes.
To get to the fun part of the game.
Exactly. It was funny how you mentioned it, like when we were having those conversations, like between us, I was like, yes, it has kind of like that slow start, but it doesn't feel like half a game was taken away from you. Like with that kind of like very protracted intro. You can still like roam around. I just don't recommend doing that early. You need to like play a lot to unlock a lot of the systems to really
focus on that.
Yeah, because I remember the first night, this is the last thing. If you're someone that loves, like, as soon as the world opens, let's go to check the question marks and all that and fill out the map. Hold on. Just
you are going to actively sabotage yourself by doing that.
You're going to get yourself a very bad impression of the world. You're going to get into question marks and be like, what's there to do here? Like, literally, you're going to see that. It's like, you have to unlock the objective tab. And you have to just mainline. Once you do that, all those places that if you unlock early seem very empty with nothing to do, boom, suddenly had a bunch of quests happen. So get there first. It's like, it's not a game that is like so freely willy. It's like, it's very again, the Assassin's Creed 3 syndrome of trying to funnel a lot the story elements into things. I felt the other RPG games were a little bit more rewarding and exploring very early without like engaging on story. I feel this one gated a bit of that stuff a little bit more, but to their credit, the story they ultimately tell here, I thought it was pretty good. So that's Assassin's Creed Shadows, and I hope people really enjoy it. And if you're not, hopefully you're not the bad faith people that we're talking smack about it beforehand, because like at least if you engage with this game in good faith, I feel Ubisoft more than enough, like more than like did the job done, like got the job done with this one. I feel like and as a final thing, because you mentioned Rise of the Ronin and Ghost of Tsushima, how does it compare? Ghost of Tsushima, it's more picturesquely beautiful. It's almost exaggeratedly artistic in like its coloring and all of that. It's why that game was very appealing to the eyes. I feel, especially playing on the PS5 Pro that I did, Shadows is more beautiful, but in a more photorealistic, way. Rise of the Ronin is more fun in combat because there's so much variety in that combat, in the weapons that you
there's
have.
how many weapons there
God
was
damn it, there
like
are like a million weapons in
yeah,
Rise of the
there's a
Ronin.
lot of weapons.
Yeah, so it's like it has so much variety. It has almost too much variety, and its combat is very aggressive that way. Shadows is more pick up and play than Rise of the Ronin, and I don't think Shadows is great in combat because at the end of the day it's just a lot of tapping R1, and yeah, that's again why I was like, I'm glad you're able to kind of switch around on stuff, because like if you're just stuck in with Josuke where a lot is like R1 R1 R1, okay, let's hold R2, R1 R1 R1, let's hold R2, and maybe parry and all of that. It's like it doesn't have the combat variety that even Ghost of Tsushima has, but Ghost of Tsushima is hard to pick up and play. I've tried many times, even during the review, to pick up
That one I think is a little more subjective because I never had that issue. But I also really gelled with like the 4 fighting styles.
Yeah, it's just you have to remember which fighting style was for each, and there especially
for some reason that is still burned into my brain. I remember like switching between each one to go like, all right, this is for the shield, this is for the spear.
You know what's my problem is that I'm stuck in Iki Island where you have a lot of mixed match enemies.
And
so
Iki Island wasn't the strongest showcase
exactly
for all that.
So and it's just it was more a hardcore showcase of like combat. So I feel that was like kind of like affecting me. I was like, man, it's not as pick up and play as I really want this to be. Whereas I feel you can pick up and play Shadows. So Shadows loses on the novelty, 100%. Ghost of Tsushima ate their lunch there. They came in first here to give a open world game in Japan. Maybe not feudal Kyoto, Japan, and all of that, but they got their first, and Rise of the Ronin got their second. But I feel it's still strong enough that it holds its toe. Like it can hold its ground against those other ones. So yeah, those are all our thoughts on Shadows.
that's Shadows. There you go.
And
go play it.
Thankfully, like Shadows was basically the big topic for this week because there's just a couple quick headlines to kind of go through that are not like too substantial to kind of stay there, but interesting headlines nonetheless. So sticking into the Assassin's Creed Shadows kind of like topic. Ubisoft reportedly has lawyers ready to fight Assassin's Creed Shadows harassment. So obviously, kind of like what I was mentioning, like this game has been cursed with really, really, really tiring and horrendous bad faith arguments being leveled at it. From the inclusion of like that is this like a woke fest just because it's just like a black samurai, despite the fact that Yasuke is a historical figure. Obviously, you can maybe, knowing that Ubisoft may have thought about it in woke ways and try to find a way how we could get a black someone into a Japanese game. Oh, there's a historical figure. We're gonna ban us doing playable historical figures and get it into this game. Regardless of the thought process, like Josuke worked, but a lot of that, there's been a lot of bad faith and harassment that has been coming from a lot of grifters, a lot of kind of like bad faith YouTubers and all that have been attacking this game. That I feel, and apparently they've gotten really personal against the devs that they're now they have lawyers ready.
It's definitely like it's been death threats towards not just the devs but the performers, and a lot of really on just all the worst things that you can imagine somebody saying to another person has been said. Unfortunately, not just for this game, but for most of the Ubisoft games, I think, lately. But especially for this one, because of obvious reasons, and how the weird cross-contamination between people who love Japanese culture and people who hate minorities.
Yes.
It's like a weird Venn diagram involving that kind of group.
Insane the Venn diagram ended up like that for this game in particular.
Can you imagine if there was a white man samurai, which was a real dude as well? There was a man that went over there and became a samurai, and he happened to be white, and he had a Asian woman and everything as his wife, and of course, I'm sure if that had happened, the talk probably would be very different.
And it ended up being because that was Neo.
Yeah, I was gonna say that was it 2016?
2017.
17, thank you.
So before all this garbage that we're like so inundated with.
Discount Geralt got to fight supernatural beings in feudal Japan.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that was a whole thing, and now this is just one more rotation around the world of more politically charged discourse.
Yeah, and I'm glad that Neo came out when it did, and Ghost of Tsushima also came out when it did, because it's like unfortunate that Neo had the advantage that it was done by a team in house. It was Team
before the
Ninja.
burnout of the FromSoft formula.
Exactly. Not only that, Neo was like done by Team Ninja, Japanese team making a game that. So it was interesting. They made the protagonist a white guy coming into like Japan, made by bad because it was made by Japan. No one really nudged their nose around that. And Sucker Punch handled Ghost of Tsushima so well that even Japanese people gave them an award, and they used that game as kind of like a good
you are the was it the ambassadors to Tsushima. I do want to shout out Rise of the Ronin for somehow sidestepping this by letting you create literally anyone and also murdering a real life white man historical figure.
Oh yes.
Actually, you know what? I don't even think you get to kill him. I think you
just beat him. Yeah, you just beat him, and then you can
eventually. I think you kill him.
Yeah,
but just Rise of the Ronin doing some crazy stuff from day one.
Exactly.
But anyway,
it was just a mix of Ubisoft being Ubisoft at their lowest ebb, and them. And I will say they did screw up a lot of the pre-marketing stuff, like doing they set up like a collector's edition or something that was kind of like an insult to the Nagasaki. It was like either Hiroshima or Nagasaki.
I could see them totally not realizing that concept because oh yeah, a Torii gate, it's broken, that's just looks cool, and unfortunately the only real life one that they ended up modeling it after was a victim of the Nagasaki bombs. But anyway, there's just a lot of bad faith stuff. Stop harassing people if you don't like something. Just move on with your lives and play something different, please.
Stop ruining gaming for everyone. It's like you just make it's what I love talking, getting to talk with you and others about games, because it's the only place where you can talk these games in good faith, because then outside is just bad faith engagement farming because of the world of Elon Musk's X. So, but yeah, I'm hoping that that these lawyers are well equipped, and that they sue their ass or anyone that attempts to harass them over this really great game at the end of the day. So 81 open critics. So the critics just spoke, people were hoping this was going to fail critically. It didn't. It landed around as well as it usually can be, and better than the last few entries. So next headline, this is for us, Paul, because we're getting close to Star Wars Celebration.
Yep.
The next Respawn Star Wars game confirmed for reveal on April 19th for Star Wars Celebration. So unfortunately for us, it's not the Mandalorian game that Respawn was working on, because remember when we learned about that game?
About that, it's they didn't even acknowledge it until it was canceled.
Yeah. But the other one that was announced, that was a combination with a guys that do strategy games, they're gonna do a turn-based tactical Star Wars game. And my disappointment, aside that Respawn is being used for a game that's not their usual style, because I want a shooter from them. I want Apex to stop being the only thing shooter-wise from them, because they're so talented for shooting. I think it's a cool idea to do a turn-based Star Wars game, because Empire at War was how long ago?
2006.
Imagine, it's almost 20 years since we got a Star Wars Empire at War.
I really hope that this ends up being good. I was talking about how it might be kind of like XCOM, which one of the first things I modded into XCOM was Star Wars characters. And then very quickly after that was Halo. So I would love one of those too, but this is a different conversation.
So you did that before Halo Wars, right?
Actually, no, I had played Halo Wars. I just really wanted to play a very specific team-based, squad-based tactical game. And that was just man, you get the blue team just out there, or you put in ODSTs, and then you mod in the Covenant as the enemies. It's perfect. It made itself. Why was that never a thing? But anyway, Halo Wars was also just a fantastic experience.
Go try them, people.
That's more like StarCraft though, but I will take whatever. I just give me a recreation of Empire at War. I don't even care. I want more Star Wars games variety, please.
And this will be the second to last one coming from EA, because they're walking away from licensed stuff. So we know we got that, and the third Jedi game, which we don't know when it's coming. It's been 2 years. Right. So I would love if by next year they're next Jedi game ready, because we got it done in 3 years. But they lost their director. The director left. So
here we go.
We'll see. So, and then another Star Wars news. PS5 Star Wars Knights of the Old Republic remake is still in development, studio confirms. So obviously, if people remember 3 years ago, me and Paul lamented over that Aspire, the guys that were making the remake, went to show the game, and it was so bad that the game director and the art director got fired, and
Yep.
probably removed from Aspire.
We're like, no, this is over.
Yeah,
It's
it's just
done.
over. But they had said
I'm
that.
kind of surprised to find out that they were saying this. They were saying like everything that's been shown, he said, is still in development.
Yeah. So,
Which I mean is like we haven't seen any gameplay, so I mean at least we know it exists. But
yeah, my thing is that why it still exists, that I remember they said that they were moving the project away from Aspire to Saber Interactive.
right,
Saber Interactive, Paul, gave us Space Marine 2.
that is a good point.
Yes, so it's like we know at the very least, like they're a very talented team, and Space Marine 2, one of the best games we played last year, already a third game confirmed because they budgeted everything just right. They found enough success and they put it out, and they have worked. Saber Interactive has worked on remakes before. They did they did the Halo 2 anniversary remake. They were the ones that did the lion's share of like the upgraded visuals and help with like the cutscenes for the Halo 2 anniversary. So there's talent there, and they got away from what's it the Embracer group that was kind of catastrophically falling apart because of failing to secure funding, and they were able to spin off and sell out, and they retained the KOTOR remake. So there's still hope. I hope we see it. I'm getting, especially you mentioned that Xenoblade was like a Knights of the Old Republic coded. I was like, I have the original and 2 installed on Xbox. I've been like holding up because I knew of this remake and holding on hope for the remake.
Mean, if you end up enjoying this kind of combat this much,
I might as well just go back and finish.
You might as well at this point, just because you're going to experience a fantastic time capsule, even if it's super dated and difficult in some places. It's certainly something, that's for sure.
Exactly.
But yeah.
So, at least when will it happen? I wonder if it's even a PS5 game at this point. It's been 4 years since it was announced.
It might show up on the PS5, but it's by that point it's going to be a PS6 game.
Yeah, I'm glad. Imagine if it shows up also. It's in secret at Star Wars Celebration.
Yeah,
I know Star Wars right now just needs any kind of good news at this point. I know Andor's gonna start soon in its month-long 3-episode batches. We're gonna be finished with Andor season 2 in like a month, literally. So. I hope it brings back happiness to Star Wars, because last year was rough.
It's certainly going to bring a lot of very specific misery to everyone, and somehow that's going to mean happiness.
Exactly. So, another headline: 2/3 of total PC playtime last year was on games that are at least 6 years old. Report says.
That one's interesting.
Yeah, it's, to me, that's really unfortunate. Kind of like this is the Fortnites, this is the Counter Strikes. This is the Apex Legends.
Yeah. This doesn't even really, like, it almost feels like not really news at all, because it's like, you know how many people are just playing Skyrim for like the 17th time? You know how many people play one game? So it's 2/3 of total PC playtime. It's just, I mean, it's just at least people are going back to old stuff. At least that's something for me, and that's what I'm gonna take from this.
Yeah, to me it's just it's kind of sad that it's like so many people are just gladly sticking to the same multiplayer game over and over. Like, I went through that yesterday when before I played Split Fiction. I didn't want to talk much about Split Fiction, but I've been playing it. I played it with my sister, and I was waiting for her to finish playing Fortnite with her husband, and I'm like, because she was like, play, but I was like, I'm tired. I don't want to play Fortnite right now. Like, I'm tired of the same aesthetic right now. I'm tired. I'm waiting for chapter 7 when there's like a big overhaul. Like, it's like, I'm shocked for the people that love to play that kind of game over and over and over and over and over and over and over. I can't do that. I need change. But so many people love sticking to that one game. More power to them. To me, last year there was discourse that a lot of these games have become black hole games, and a lot of new game sales were suffering because of that. So this is just an emblem of that. But at least us that are more of a more civilized era, Paul, we love variety. We love changing stuff. We love new games.
Don't we love it?
And we're for sure gonna get new game from Devil May Cry. Dragon's Dogma director say his new studio is working on a AAA action game. So obviously, if you enjoyed the combat of Devil May Cry 2 starting from 2 onwards, maybe not 2, maybe just like think of 3 onwards. But
3 onwards. Let's go with that.
But he
took over 2 and made it not as bad as it could have been, even though
Exactly.
it was pretty bad.
Exactly.
That's like when you have a group project and you hand it into the smart guy with like 30 minutes left before you have
Exactly.
to
So
hand it in.
he just took it out of the finish
Yeah.
line, but then he wanted to prove himself, be like, no, we gotta fix this, and that's where Devil May Cry 3 happened, one of the greatest action games ever made.
And I'm definitely interested in whatever this is. I watched a video essay that was 56 minutes long on Dragon's Dogma 2, and it actually made me almost re-download the game because I was just like, maybe this time it'll be different.
Yes, I feel like I feel that game like will be so much better for us removed from this is the next Elden Ring. That really ruined it for us.
I need to like go back and completely revisit the way to try that game, because it's completely removed from any way you're supposed to normally approach any video game at all. It's like you would need to approach that thing like it's 2000 and you just got home from like your Windows 98 machine and you downloaded a really obscure PC adventure game that you got to really think outside the box to fix. And that's exactly kind of how I'm thinking about it. And like your Dark Messiah kind of approach to things, like you got to really be thinking, because that game will beat you into an inch of your life and then blame you for your experience.
Yeah,
so yeah,
so just to kind of read some details. So obviously Itsuno, he was talking to people at GDC, Game Developers Conference. He said that it's gonna be a AAA action game in a Japanese style, aiming to create a unique game experience as he has done with his previous titles. So he joined this new team called Lightspeed Studios last year after he left Capcom for after 30 years. And obviously Dragon's Dogma 2 was his final contribution to Capcom, and obviously a very big financial success for them considering the niche nature of Dragon's Dogma, even though for a lot of people it was kind of a disappointment considering the steam of Dragon's Dogma had grown so much with Dragon's Dogma 1 that it was still kind of like a game that was very had a lot of problems but had a uniqueness to it. But glad that he's already kind of giving us an idea of what he wants. Like, we know this guy knows how to do combat, and hate a lot of the choice of Dragon's Dogma 2. Combat in that game actually does feel nice, and when you go back to that one, you can play it in a performance mode now. You can play it at faster, because remember that game was at 30. So
that's right.
Yeah, so they've improved it since then. But I will never forget, it's like we got bamboozled of people saying that it was going to be the next Elden Ring, and those words should have never been said for that game. I feel like it rose our expectation too high for what it was, and especially for me coming from Rebirth. So, and with that, Paul, that ends this week's headlines. Obviously, not too much. Like a note there.
Nothing crazy. Some good stuff to chat about and remember. Like kind of the fact that the KOTOR remake even exists and stuff like that.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Finish us up by doing what Joe does now and read me the release dates for the week of.
Back at it.
March 23rd,
23rd to the 29th.
March is already over. Nuts.
Insane.
Yeah.
So we got Dark Deity 2 on the PC, March 24th. Folklands PC, March 24th. Breakout Beyond PS5, PS4, Xbox Series X and S, Xbox One, Switch, and PC on March 25th. Mother Machine on PC, March 26th. Twilight Monk, Switch and PC, March 26th. Wednesdays, PC, March 26th. AI Limit, PC, PS5 on March 27th. Adamfall, PC, PS4 and 5, Xbox One, Xbox Series X and S on March 27th. Hitman World of Assassination, PSVR 2 on March 27th. First Berserker Kazan, PC, PS5, Xbox Series X and S on March 27th. Rain World DLC, The Watcher, PC, PS4, PS5, Switch, Xbox X and S, Xbox One on March 28th, and Inzoi on PC, March 28th.
Yes, so out of this ones, Adamfall will get to try its Game Pass. So
yeah, I mean, I might not even bother trying it, but at least it exists.
Yeah,
and
I've heard
maybe it'll be what I thought. What was that other one that was set in Russia that was super disappointing?
Not Metro, right?
No. The other that was different. Shoot, what's the one with the robots?
Oh, Atomic Heart.
Thank you, Atomic Heart. That was the one that I was really looking forward to. So maybe this will be a little bit more along those lines. And then obviously we were very curious about the first Berserker Kazan. I'm thinking it's going to be more like anime game numbers, so not a whole lot, but it has a lot of quality in what we've seen. So I'm hoping that it spawns more games like it, because the Dungeon Fighter series that has the MMO and now the fighting game of, I guess, middling success, but
Mhm.
high critical success.
Yeah.
I hope that it spawns more like that because that's a really interesting world.
Yeah. I played the demo for Kazan. I enjoyed it, but right now it's again like how I am with the Souls like genre that is like I'm soul stout still. I'm still
Very
recovering.
much.
I'm
Even
still
if it's more actiony,
mhm,
I'm tired of the whole lock on,
mhm. Strike
centered up,
around. Yeah.
and hit the not the face buttons, the shoulder buttons to do your whole attack
Mhm.
situation. Of course, we're talking like that, and we're playing Assassin's Creed Shadows right now,
Exactly.
but
But
it's I that's probably why like this is the only exception to that because it's a long running series that we both love a lot.
mhm,
And then I'm going back to my freaking MMO sci-fi fantasy weirdness of
exactly.
Xenoblade, I think.
And remember, like in Assassin's Creed is technically not a Souls like. Souls likes are very specific at kicking your teeth
Right.
in and
Yeah,
all
yeah.
that. So it's like despite the similarities of shoulder attacks, the attacks in Berserker Kazan are actually face buttons, but
Oh,
it's still
fantastic.
yeah, it's still in that like dodge, perfect parry of like
Was
but
Black Myth Wukong face buttons or shoulder
yes,
buttons?
face buttons too. So
Okay.
but
But still,
the
very,
combat
very
of that game was rough. Like it was rough to
Souls-like
get a
at
good
the
feel.
same time.
Yes, yes.
Whoever said it was more action than Souls-like was a liar.
Exactly. Yeah, it's still like it's still because of the combos that you could do, but it's still like the
Yeah.
flow was assaults. Like they were trying to merge the two, and it didn't work. That game, I enjoyed it finishing it because it had amazing moments. But gosh, like that one, like remember I beat it at the nick of time in December 31st.
Yep.
Like that was
Remember
the last
that.
game I played in 2024. So at Adamfall, maybe I'll sell you on this. I got told that it's like Deus Ex, so like a Deus Ex Fallout.
Interesting.
So keep your eye out in the reviews for that one for next week. So and yeah, and then Kazan, the reviews have to be exceptional for me to even consider that right now. This is a way for sale for me, regardless of what it is.
Yeah.
We haven't played full at this point, but
Way
now
too
we're
far.
now we're on the wait for whatchamacallit, Expedition 33. And glad that your camera froze
Yes.
until
Yeah.
just the end.
It froze right at the end. Let's
Exactly. Yeah.
land this plane before I crash it.
Absolutely. Full episode over. Where can people find you?
As always, y'all can find me on Twitter/X and Blue Sky at Dork of Art. I every once in a while I just really need some integration with the PlayStation 5 to be able to directly post all of my times of breaking something because I just need cheap laughter
Yes.
now.
Yeah. I had quite some amazing clips that I showed you of my playthrough
I have to
of
just
Shadow.
directly message it to you because there's no other way to easily do it unless I want to
There's
upload it to YouTube
I
and then
almost, by
share
the way,
it.
pulled that Jasuke one about the that is, I almost put it in a
Yes.
video review. I almost put it.
Oh,
Almost.
that would have been lovely because
Yeah,
it's just such a weirdly specific dumb thing that happened.
I know.
Yeah,
But
just
I did show it to the SG crew. I was like, I present you Dick Assassination.
yeah.
Or the Dick Assassination Seppuku. But yeah, you can find me at _Segovia on Twitter, Segovia on Blue Sky, and find my written content over at the seasongaming.com where you can read my reviews for Eternal Strands, Monster Hunter Wilds, and now Assassin's Creed Shadows, and a bunch of other articles I've written that are not reviews. So, and with that, we thank you so much for listening for this week's episode. Sorry that it was like a little bit of a technical choppy one that's gonna require a lot of edits, and and enjoy the weekend, enjoy Assassin's Creed. Hopefully, like you ignore the noise and find that despite some roughness, there's a great game inside there. Now it's spring, go touch some grass, but if not,
press X.
to play.
Good night, everybody.
Hasta la vista, baby.